Welcome to Modern Marketing Messages, the leading podcast discussing the latest and greatest in both online and offline marketing tactics, strategies, and trends. I'm your host, Taylor Karg, marketing content writer at AmericanEagle.com. Today, we're going to talk about all things digital acceleration, including what it means, what challenges pushing a digital-first agenda brings to a company, how to overcome those challenges, and so much more. To do that, I have here with me Brendan Cameron, Strategic Account Director from the B2B division at AmericanEagle.com, and Jason Stutes, a man with expansive industry experience as a VP of Marketing and e-commerce, Chief Digital Officer, and more. Brendan, Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Would both of you like to introduce yourself and explain a little bit about, what you're doing in your current roles? Jason, I know there's a lot to talk about with you, so we'll dive more into your overall experience in a little bit. Brendan, you want to go first?
Yeah. So my name is Brendan. I'm the Director of Strategy of B2B here at American Eagle. My day-to-day is, helping our clients understand that it's not always about functionality. It's not always about building the product and then just automatically getting all those results and expectations you have. Being from the Midwest, I like saying, you're not Kevin Costner. It's not Field of Dreams here. Once you build it, then there's a lot more work to be done afterwards. So really trying to help, our customers understand where those needs are, what those goals are, and how we could kind of recommend that roadmap to help them grow and scale.
Awesome. I'm glad you're here. I don't think you've been a guest on Modern Marketing Messages before, so this is an exciting time.
It's a first time, yeah.
Awesome. And Jason, can you just explain a little bit about, what you're doing currently and kind of where you're from, all that good stuff?
Yeah, Jason Stutes. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I've been the VP of Marketing and Analytics for barbecueguys.com for 18 years now.
Wow.
Started out as an affiliate manager and then started to own and operate some of the web properties. And that goes from SEO to paid media, all the conversion tactics and whatnot. And as the industry evolved over the years, so did my responsibilities. So insert social media, SMS, all the new forms of new communication and methods of branding and discovery. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been the Chief Digital Officer at Barbecue Guys, which really focuses or allows me to focus on that cross-functional duties to align with the merchandising and the technology arms of the business.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And as a Louisiana man, did you participate in Mardi Gras festivities this year?
This year and every year.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Sounds awesome.
We leave on Friday morning and we return on Monday. And yes, it was a blast like always.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I think before we get started, I'm just curious to know kind of how you two got connected, because I know Brendan had, had previous communications with you and suggested you as a guest to come on our show. So can one of you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah. Jason and I, started doing business together between Hawk Search, a subsidiary of American Eagle, and Barbecue Guys.
Wow.
We've been in contact for a number of years now. We've gone through, a number of different projects, but I think most importantly, just kind of stayed in contact with each other, sharing stories, seeing, where we could help each other and just answer a few questions. There's always an ear open or ready to talk. And, with this podcast opening up, I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of take those conversations and just bring them into the public setting. Cause I think I end up learning a lot, but I think other people would be really interested to kind of hear some of these stories that we've told each other.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave the Mardi Gras stories out of it.
Yeah. That's where off the hours podcast.
Shows too. You meet a lot of people that get the industry, that know how to the matrix of it. And he was always a guy that I could talk to and really understand the back end and what we're trying to do in the front end to make sure that all kind of connects. But yeah, once you start having those conversations, it's hard to ignore that.
Awesome. Love it. So jumping right in, Jason, I know you gave us a little snapshot of your experience and what you've been doing for the last few years, but can you give us a little bit more background on your career and how, you became a chief digital officer and where your area of focus has been, throughout that time?
Yeah, like I talked about just a while ago, it started early and doing little bitty segments of a digital business, e-commerce business. And over time, I started hiring teams to do such just like SEO or paid media, and became a marketing director. And then we opened up some storefronts in Baton Rouge. So I got a little omni-channel experience through that. And then became marketing director, to where I was running the brand side and the performance side of things. But as a digital first company, obviously a lot of our efforts became more focused on that performance marketing aspect, which really then kind of led to the data and analytics that supports the performance side. And that was always something that I was highly interested in. I graduated at LSU in ISDS, so I always had a knack for understanding systems and how they get built, and the data that is going to get pipelined to them to make sure that the systems know exactly what's going on with the business. So it's just always been an interesting industry and career path, just because it's constantly changing, and that's just always kind of kept me to be in this field.
Awesome. And that kind of leads me into my next question of, what do you love most about the industry? You've been in this industry a long time. You've, managed a lot of different people. You've took on so many different responsibilities. So what's something that you love about this industry and that keeps you here?
It's always changing.
Yeah.
It's a constant change. Every 3 months, what I like to say is every 3 months there's going to be something new. Right. And there's never a boring day. The industry demands that you stay on your toes and you engage with what's happening outside of the organization. Which is why I accepted this podcast, just because it's gonna open my eyes up to a lot of things outside as well. I am no longer with Barbecue Guys for about a month now. Taking some time off, and then being in transition. But I'm gonna stay on the brand side. It's podcasts like this that's like, hey, there is no time off, right? So you got to make sure that you're always learning and growing, and because of that, it keeps you engaged, and I love that. You can never kind of sleep on what's going on in the e-commerce world.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we spoke, about what we wanted to talk about today, Brendan, myself, and you kind of talked us through this concept of digital acceleration, which is what I want to talk about today. So with that being said, what is, in your opinion, in your terms, digital acceleration? I feel like the term, in our industry that's widely used is digital transformation. Is there a difference? What does this all mean?
Yeah, in my opinion, there's not much difference, but digital transformation is really an old concept that companies adopt using new tools and platforms to kind of renew their infrastructure, right? There's a problem with that in transformation. It's often slow and tedious, and sometimes just never complete. In today's world, businesses are quite opposite. You don't have time to wait for a digital transformation to be complete. So that's why I do like to use the word digital acceleration, just because it's an evolution of that transformation, that digital transformation. You can still update the core IT structure, but while doing that, you're pushing for quick business transformation, and that provides something that is going to provide instant value from the get-go. And better yet, the most important thing is how can you provide? How does it handle future scenarios? Just with COVID or everything happening in the last 3 years, you got to be prepared for the unknown. There's one thing that's going to happen is this industry and your business is going to change. So how do you adapt to that is going to be key. Digital acceleration is not a technical. It's not only a technical and operational process, but most importantly, it's a cultural process. And I feel like that's the thing that matters the most in terms of acceleration, is because you have to transform your organization on the fly. But first, you got to empower your workforce with the new skills to adapt.
Yeah, I also took it into transformation sounds static. It sounds like when you flip a switch, you go from off to on.
Yeah.
That's not really possible. And in this day and age, with everything coming out, I deal with customers all the time that are like, well, we have our PPC running. And we're like, okay, that's great.
Check.
Yeah. And you're like, but are you running things like remarketing ads? And they're like, what's that? And it's like, well, it's that entirely different type of piece that you could use your AdWords budget and your Google account on, that will have those sticky banners that show up everywhere you go on the internet. Like, oh, that would be really useful. It's like, yeah. I feel that the acceleration kind of promotes that more fluid process.
Yeah.
It's making sure people understand that, the second you get your SEO done, or the second you put in like an AdWords budget, you're done. Like, you always need to stay on to it. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing blow up is literally just using influencer marketing. How great it is to get in contact with somebody, put a deal together, and have them start promoting your product. I mean, social media with TikTok blowing up, and, Instagram, having some of those branded segments, just being able to promote the product, or even in niche markets, having, the tooling, the machinist type of people talk about how great your tool bits are. Like, anything like that is a new opportunity that you need to identify. But if you're stuck in the mindset with just that, as Jason kind of said, just the checklist,
yeah,
it doesn't really work out in that long term.
Yeah, I totally agreed. I think using the term transformation, to me, instills that there's like an end point. It's like, okay, we did this project, now we're done, we're transformed. But it's kind of what you both said, talking about acceleration. Like, there's always new things to be done. There's always things that we can be doing better, new items to be researched. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Just because you have influencer marketing, doesn't mean that it's a check. And, now you got to test the attribution, and, if there's incrementality there, you got to keep them engaged. How are you going to interact the creative content into your paid ads or your own properties? I mean, there's countless of ways that after you say, okay, we need to engage with influencer marketing, how do you make the most out of
it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it worth your money and time?
All very important questions. Jason, when did you kind of, either at Barbecue Guys or throughout your career, when did you start using the term digital acceleration? When did that shift from digital transformation to digital acceleration happen for you?
Yeah. Trick question, by the way, because I normally don't say it, right? It's a mindset, and since early 2000s, it's always been my mindset is the acceleration piece. But search was the king back in the day. From organic and just the idea of different domains. And then there's a lot of monolithic architecture out there that allows you to go deep, but you're kind of stuck in that architecture. Well, recently, or for the last, let's call it 10 years, the customer expectations have just been rising really, really fast. I think faster than ever today. But customers want that unique experience. And what came after that is a bunch of headless and microservices that made a lot of sense for businesses like ourselves to adapt and to continue to adapt to make sure that we're meeting the expectations. So I would say that when I saw how quick it is to engage with different platforms and from a headless standpoint, and really kind of plug and play some of the tech software out there, that's when it's like, oh, okay, we got to go fast, right? Because if not, you're going to get passed up. And really, not even after the headless and all that's coming to play, but really now with OpenAPI or OpenAI, that's a whole new different wave, right?
Yeah.
And so with generative art and text, that might not be for everybody, but it's only a matter of time when it's incorporated into your daily workflow. And that's the part about digital acceleration. How can that workforce adapt something that is going to be handed to them or not handed to them, but their competitors are, right? How can you put that into your go-to-market strategy? It's going to be very important. Like I said, if you don't do it, somebody else will. And, you kind of want to take advantage of what's given and allow the customer experience to be elevated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tools in your arsenal versus, again, steps in a process, I feel.
So, Jason, I feel like you kind of answered this a little bit already, but I want to see, if there's anything else that sticks out for this question. But what made the term digital acceleration really stick with you? You said it's a mindset. So how and why has that mindset really stuck with you throughout your career?
To me, accelerate means go.
Yeah.
I see it almost like a Formula One race car driving. You're going to have to go through, a lot of turns. It's like I'm just not trying to go 200 miles an hour. I'm trying to stop, go fast, stop, go fast. And that's the mindset. And you cannot perfect a model that way. What you have to do is roll out, an MVP model mentality. To make sure that you're testing the waters before going full in. And you just got to be extremely fluid. And if things change, you can adapt and go fast and pivot when need be.
One of the big things is I always deal with, and I think this may help a lot of people too, is you go in and you say like, okay, what are our goals? Where our goals are to beat Amazon, or our goals are to beat Grainger, or whoever it is. And it's like, okay, so that's a good goal. How are we going to do that? And they just go, well, we'll just do everything that Amazon did. It's like, well, that worked for them. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
So to again, bring it back you need to understand the tools that are available to you, and then also be able to say when each tool is going to benefit you at any given point in time and when some tools may not. So it goes into just blindly following in. A follower is never going to be a leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So getting ahead of the game by trying to copy somebody else is not one of those positions. And again, I feel in that digital transformation mindset, that is kind of that thing. You can just kind of say, okay, we're going to transform to this defined set of things. But with acceleration, it's let's see what is going to work for us. Continue to accelerate with those things, maybe put a couple other things to the side.
But that said, a fool using a tool is still a fool.
Yeah.
Hopefully the business and the leaders of our business is making sure that there's clear objectives, right, about the business and what it means to succeed. And it's not just, we got to grow revenue. To me, growing revenue is a form of a result. Right. So what can you do beforehand that is going to drive customer expectations, which results into our customers' experience? That's going to result into more revenue. And so hopefully with clearer objectives that leaders are making sure that somebody's just not chasing the nice shiny object or the new tool and trying to incorporate it to be an Amazon. Hopefully it's aligned with their business strategy.
So I think we kind of just touched upon something that answers my next question with a little bit of, like defining those business objectives. But what challenges have you faced or you've seen, other businesses or companies face when it comes to this digital acceleration and pushing a digital first agenda?
Yeah. You can incorporate a new site search functionality or a solution into your site. And hopefully, that change is netting millions of dollars, let's call it, right? The opposite of that is a couple of changes to your site, or strategy could also affect your business. So I think there's a lot of fear in that, right? It's that change in your business is literally, let's call it, a click away or a test away. And I think that just brings a lot of fear. And people think they know what they want to do and they want to do it, but they just don't push it over the finish line. And so there's a lot of change management that comes with that. And there's a lot of process of planning and preparation to just make sure that, that when you go live, it's actually live. And I think people forget that in the digital world of how easy it is to make changes to your overall strategy and affect the customer's experience and overall the trajectory of your business.
What strategies have you employed to, kind of push those people, to the next step? Like you just said, all it takes is, trying to convince other people to take that step. How have you been able to do that?
Like I said, lots of planning, preparation. I think we might have talked about this earlier, but I think leaders need to instill an outcome over output mentality. I don't know if that's probably a separate, podcast, but
do you want to quickly explain that for anyone who doesn't know? Maybe me.
Outcomes over outputs is, you're trying to increase the customer experience, right? You're not just trying to put out a white paper or, somebody can wash their hands after, delivering several outputs. But if you're not ultimately changing the outcome of what you're trying to do, then don't stop. Keep doing it, right? And so that kind of mentality of outcome is trying to increase the customer experience, which again is going to lead to multiple things. It's a mentality that takes a lot of planning, a lot of cross-functional communication, just because there's so many different aspects of the business that has to change. And so many people within the organization come from, so many different walks of life, whether it's communicating to the customer or the technology that's going to be supported. Some people are more engaged with the data or know what to do with the data. And then some people are, like we just talked about, don't know the matrix. They're so used to dealing with the platform. So just everybody has to be in constant communication about what you're actually trying to do in terms of an outcome.
And that mentality too is huge, because I think when we deal with a lot of people that are entering into this space, they're doing it just because they're told to. I don't know how many times I've talked to somebody. It's like, well, what are you looking for? Or what do you need? And they're like, well, I'm told we need this. It's like, well, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
It is that whole thing where you have kind of, I almost want to say like a reverse pyramid, where you have the actual technology and you have the processes and everything. But while a lot of people put that as like the foundation, I almost want to say you got to put that at the very top, because that technology, that process isn't going to work unless these two other components, which is, as Jason said, people and culture.
Yeah.
If you don't have the buy-in and you don't have that company mentality to drive your space, to drive your brand, it doesn't matter, if you spend thousands or millions of dollars every year on the technology, it's not going to work. And I'm stealing that from you, Jason.
Yeah, I love that.
A fool with a tool?
Yeah.
100%.
Well, like I said, you really have to empower those people. They are the ones that know the space and they know where they're at, and whether it's email or, we talked about SMS and all that. Like, they're the ones pulling the triggers every day. And so you need to empower them to make sure that they're just not satisfied. There's a lot of people out there, and it's like, why are you doing this? Because we've always done it that way.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good enough anymore. It's like, if it's not helping you and the bottom line, then you got to change that process. Sometimes that means the tool.
Yeah. And I don't think you need to, I 100% will say you should never punish failure. Like, failure is that thing. But to an extent, I'm not saying everyone could run around doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
But growing up as like a Mythbusters child, failure is always an option type of thing. So it's one of those pieces, as long as you can walk away from failure and learn something from it and be able to change the next step you take, that should be rewarded in the company culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of fear, like in that change management, people are scared that if they try something different or do something new and they fail, they're afraid the hammer is coming down on them,
Which I think, keeps a lot of people from trying something new in the first place, is that they're scared that the hammer is going to come down and that kind of stuff.
The hammer comes down when you don't try.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Fail, right? You should be failing all the time. To me, success is failure. As simple as that. It's when you don't try. That's when that's when the hammer comes.
Yeah. And that's part of that cultural shift. You need to promote that within your organization. It's got to come from the top down.
Yeah.
The VPs, the executives need to say, look, I'm okay, eat and grow, if you went out on the edge and tried something a little bit different, because, I may have lost a couple $100 in AdWords, but the potential was to get a whole lot more out of it.
Yeah.
So.
And how do you know if you don't try? So we talked about for, instilling change and, grabbing this digital acceleration mindset by the horns, to empower, the bottom line. But say, someone at an organization wants to adopt this digital acceleration mindset. How do you convince other organizational leaders? Is it kind of the same as empowering, your workers to try and take that step? Or is it different when you're, trying to convince the C-suite or any leaders in the company that this is a mindset that you want them to adopt as well?
I think most leaders already have that kind of mindset, especially in the business sense. But the mindset shouldn't be we have to disrupt the industry to grow. Right? Like there's a lot of wiggle room to in there in your strategy to grow. It should be that if we don't accelerate our business, we will be disrupted. And it's not so much of fear; it's always being on your toes, like I talked about. Knowing that within 3 months something could change and your business could be not out of business, but on the wrong side of the tracks, let's call it. So that mindset of if we don't do something now to accelerate it, we will be disrupted.
Yeah, I got you. In your opinion, let's say, what are 3 priorities you suggest focusing on when it comes to digital acceleration? And how do you determine what those priorities are?
The thing is everybody has to be on the same bus, right? And so there needs to be some sort of single source of truth when it comes to data. Everybody has to look at the same scorecard, if not agreed upon that this is the scorecard that this individual or this department is going to be operating off of. And with that said, the data, the perfect is the enemy of good, because the data is never going to be 1000% correct. And that's okay, right? It's relative. It should be going up or down based off what metric you're looking at. But that's where I think, management and employees really need to understand the single source of truth, understand what needle you're trying to move, and determine the goals. The goal before the goal is actually more important. I talked about, those leading indicators that lead to revenue, making sure that it's crystal clear and helping everybody understand what are the goals before the goal, right? And build that team around those objectives. And when we talk about outcomes over outputs, what you need to do is make sure that you're maximizing the outcomes and minimizing the outputs. And if you can do that, that is business, and that usually leads to greater profits.
The only thing that I would add is, and we mentioned it probably a dozen times already, but having that team, having everyone on the same page, having everyone, have the same motives. This is where you really want to start being more selective with, who you're bringing in. Because the people that just are going to be skating are the people that only believe in the old ways that they've been taught. I'd take somebody green that has the drive over somebody that's been, in Google Analytics or using AdWords for 10 or 15 years now. Because those are the people that might potentially be just comfortable sitting and doing the same thing that they've done every day.
Yeah.
This is not an assembly line. This is the exact opposite of an assembly line.
In terms of priority too, right? When you're trying to maximize outcomes and minimize the outputs, you have to understand where your customers are and how they are engaging your site and your channels. I've seen it happen countless of times where everybody wants to focus on new stuff, right? Or a small little page that is, getting 8% of your traffic. Why not go affect something that's going to touch 80% of your traffic? right? And again, that goes back to that fear of like, okay, maybe I don't want to optimize the shopping cart just because there's a lot of things that could go wrong. Well, you better be optimizing the shopping cart because that's how you impact your overall business, opposed to saying, hey, we're gonna update this landing page that gets 2% of the traffic. It's like, sure, that's a great place to start, but you're trying to change the customer experience here. You're not really just trying to change one page. And sometimes that, like I said, it comes with a lot of planning and preparation, but that's the sort of changes that really catapult you into success.
Yeah. You don't want a bug skewing your results.
Yeah.
So yeah, having everything seamless when you go into A/B testing, because yes, it may come back that the second option was the worst, but honestly, the second option was worse because you click proceed to checkout and nothing happened. And it's like, well, of course that's not going to go through on our A/B test looking well. So yeah, having that pre-production work, having everything ready to go, just as important as having the technology to do the A/B test itself.
Yeah. So why is it important to adopt digital acceleration, and how does it contribute to setting your business up for future success? I know we talked a lot about, having this mindset and having the willingness to try so that, for lack of a better term, you're not left behind. But, in your opinion, why is this important?
Yeah, I've been in the game for quite some time, and based on my experience, I've never felt like I won at the end of a fiscal year. I mean, sure, there's bonuses and targets that are usually tied to that, but the winning comes from accomplishing the quick wins throughout the year and pivoting when need be. Right? If you do that throughout the course of the year, you're going to have a really good in the end of the year. They tend to add up. And sometimes surpass your annual target. So that's the mentality of the digital acceleration and how you're setting up for future successes, because you're probably failing 20 times along the way, and you're learning, and you're not waiting to the end of the year for an annual new strat plan where it's like, okay, now because it's a new year, we got to focus on this. It's like e-com and digital. It doesn't work like that. It's hey, what are you learning throughout the course of the quarter, course of a day? Sometimes in performance marketing, it's to an hour. And empowering your team to know that the business is changing, and they are going to be part of that. And so one of the things that I like to do is, my QBRs, every manager has their own QBR to where, they're talking about the KPIs and the things that they're accomplished, but I also like to get them to understand what's happening in the industry, right? And so if they're catching it on a quarterly level, then it really gets them to think about how can they incorporate that into their overall, into their department. And it's not, let's wait to the end of the year. To where there's, like I said, there's another annual, strat plan that tells them what to do next. It's like they're catching something every 3 months, and they're thinking about how to present it. They're thinking about how to communicate it to the other team members. And they're also thinking about how can they incorporate it into their daily strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, kind of just summarizing what you said, the ability, to be adaptable and to pivot when needed is a great quality to have, as a person, as a professional, and as a business as a whole.
And as a leader too. I mean, one of the big points is we will always push for objective reasoning over subjective.
Yeah.
And if you have your leadership team be telling the people doing that day-to-day work, the people in the trenches, saying it's always been this way, or people have always needed this or wanted this, that's fine if you show me that people want it and people need it. But if you're just telling me that, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And it may be a starting point, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. With that team mentality, if an analyst comes up to me and says, I know that we've said this, but what I've found is the exact opposite of what you said. And if you have the data there, that leadership position, that person in that team lead should be able to say, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong. And without having that bit of humility, again, it's going to be just as destructive, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason, it's clear, you've had a great career so far, a lot of success, a lot of, trials, tribulations, figuring things out. Tell us about a pivotal moment in your career and what made it so significant that it still sticks with you today.
Yeah, it was actually really clear. In 2015, maybe, I was asked to start the analytics division of the company.
At
Limited
Barbecue
resources.
Guys?
At Barbecue Guys, yep.
Awesome.
Limited resources. And so, you really kind of understand the processes and you're doing it yourself. Just like, a lot of new divisions and departments are pivots within the company. And so I had to really kind of teach, SQL myself, really had to learn a lot and just, cut your teeth on it. I was exploring numerous data tables and really kind of see what was available to me to get that insight. And what that allowed me to do is see how the sausage is made. Right. And it's like, once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. And that time to really kind of just understand how to merge different data sets to truly get insights, it completely changed how I view the business, completely changed how I empower my team, just because I know how things are kind of made.
And that's 2015. Like now BI tools are the norm.
Yeah.
So like
they weren't just,
and it really wasn't that long ago. I mean,
no,
I know, right?
That's the whole thing. Like it clicks when suddenly you're like, I've been doing this every day. And now like there's a tool for that.
Yeah.
Like we've been using, workflows and charts. And now like there's a service like Lucid Chart out there. And you're like, where has this been my entire career?
Why did it take this long for someone to make this?
Yeah, but there's a really cool skill set that has come, right, that you inherited or built because you had to do it the hard way or the long way, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see a lot of people today with so many SaaS solutions. Like if there's not an app that can easily be deployed and already integrated, they almost can't think outside of that.
Yeah.
Where where I come from, you had to think outside it because there wasn't a lot of SaaS tools, right, or solutions out there. So you had to really kind of think through it and learn and again fail. A lot of failure of what not to do in order to know what to do.
So I'm going to take it in the opposite direction of my previous question, but in terms of your professional career, or of the industry as a whole, what has kept you up at night?
Oh, I think introducing new ideas is never a problem, but it excites me and it really challenges me to introduce new ways to really kind of influence and get the team hyped up about, this idea. You want to make an impact. And what I'm looking for is that, I get it, right? Or, we can do that. It's like, that's the type of stuff that I look forward to. And so, it's challenging of how can you keep that motivating and uplifting and constantly kind of, changing the ways that you promote creativity within the workforce. As a leader, you want to get it right, because if you get it right, you're going to have a team that's going to run through the wall for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one last question for you today, and that is, what is one main message you want our listeners of this episode to take away?
I actually have a really good quote for that. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah. Success is not a cure. But it's an addictive skill set.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
What that means is just the speed at which you fail will determine your success. Right. And so understanding that your first attempt and your guess is going to be wrong, it's how you counter to that and what you learn in the process that ultimately leads for you to be successful. Right. And if you know that you're going to fail, then hopefully what you're doing is preparing to fail and you're already preparing your counter. And to me, that's an addictive skill set is instead of waiting for that big, hairy or audacious goal to happen, you're looking at it from, 20 quick wins to be like, okay, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to deploy this. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to deploy this. Or if I learn this, then I can do this. to me, that is addictive and a skill set that ultimately leads to success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, listening to you explain that really resonates with what I do on a daily basis. As another writer on my team, we write a lot about things that, we're not extremely knowledgeable on. With all of the services that AmericanEagle.com does, it's hard to be a subject matter expert on everything that these people have spent, 15 plus years perfecting. So we always say, like, we have to have the ability and the confidence to try. And that's like what our first draft is. We try our hardest, we put this together, we send it to the subject matter expert, and then obviously, it goes through tons of edits and another explanation. But, that really resonated with things that I do on a daily basis. So
yeah. And the other thing is, like, as a chief digital officer, how can I be the expert at TikTok before TikTok was even invented?
You can't. Yeah.
There's going to be something new.
Yeah.
And there's going to be massive things that I don't even know, or, another colleague is going to know. And so the mindset is that we're going to learn together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. I learned a lot. Brendan, thank you so much for co-hosting with me today. This was great. And, looking forward to listening to this episode.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jason.
Yeah. Appreciate having me.
Thank you for listening to Modern Marketing Messages. For more information about the topic discussed today, check out the description of this episode. If you like this episode, follow the podcast wherever you listen to them to stay up to date with us. While you're at it, give us a rating and share this podcast with others. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Modern Marketing Messages. This episode is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. I'm Taylor Karg, and I'll be back with another Modern Marketing Message.